We are back with another episode of the Do As I Say, Not As I Did podcast. As always, the name explains everything. I'm giving you advice based on everything I did wrong the first time. But each week I also bring on founders, investors, product experts, technology futurists, sales gurus, and just about anyone who is really smart who can help me and us as the audience work out how to build a great business. And then together, we answer the questions about what's going on in your lives and in your businesses, because people send through questions, and also I get into deep Reddit holes about what's going on in people's businesses. And then I find those questions the most interesting, insane questions, and then I run them through with the guest. And when I read them to the guest, they've never heard these before, so they're hearing them live for the first time, just like you are. So if you have questions you want us to answer, or if you're trying to put out fires that you want advice on, send those through to podcast@joelditrapani.com, and we'll workshop them on the show. And I know that is a hard name to spell, so I'm just going to put that in the notes and you can copy and paste it later on. I'm your host, Joel DiTrapani, and I can't believe you judged me for having a hard name to spell. But I'll forgive you. I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of Vigo. It's an edtech scale-up, and we've grown it through Australia and the UK, and now we're focused on the US. On top of that, I'm an advisor and a coach in the product space where I help startups and businesses learn how to build great products. And the secret to that is just learning how to build great product teams. And that is something I got wrong time and time again in my history. And today, I'm super excited to be joined by my friend, Aly DeNardo. Aly has done a lot in her career, and writing this was pretty challenging. Trying to explain all of it would probably take the entire episode, so I'm going to give you the highlights that I love most. Right now, Aly is the COO for Matt Mashari, which means she does almost everything you can imagine in one of the most interesting companies in the world for the greatest CEO coach alive. Now, I'm biased about my experience with Matt, but don't trust me. Trust the founders of OpenAI, Reddit, Coinbase, Brex, Discord, and all the rest who swear by him and the work that he and Aly do to help businesses grow. Aly's doing incredible work with Matt and fundamentally changing the way that business operates. But that's just now. Before this, Aly has a wealth of experience in VC, working as a partner and investor at multiple high-profile firms. On top of that, she's co-founded numerous businesses and was employee number one helping Justin Khan get Atrium off the ground, which is now insane, and just had insane experiences there. Aly is trusted by the biggest names in tech because she's an incredible operator. But what I love most is that Aly is a very deep thinker and philosophizer, which means she's super interesting to hang out with it and always up for a very interesting conversation, why I'm excited for today. Aly is an absolute expert at everything operations in scaling companies. So let's jump into it. Welcome, Aly. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for that fantastic intro. I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm so excited.
I try and shock my guests with an intro. That's always like a win for me on the podcast. So I'm glad you liked it.
I appreciate it. I thought that was fantastic. That's great. Thank you.
Well, but before we jump into the challenges, tell me, what's keeping you up at night?
That's a great question. I think being an operator and someone who splits their attention in 1,000 different ways every day. Often the things that will not necessarily keep me up at night or the things that I'll think about in the morning before I get into my work are just a little thing of like, oh, I have to send this person this invite, or like it's context switching. But for me, as someone who's done this type of work for a long time, I've built up my practice of protecting my mornings and my evenings that are for me and not for my job. And so I now sleep very well because I have a bookend to my workday and a process to digress out of my day-to-day stress, if you will. So the fake answer is the little things that I need to do the next day. The real answer is I sleep like a baby now, but because I put a lot of work behind it.
That shit takes work. And for context for the audience, Aly and I we had an hour booked to record, and we spent 40 minutes talking about that before we started. So this is very
morning
much a short
routines.
answer.
We're on it.
Yeah, I love it. Well, with that, let's jump into the questions today. So, challenge number one. I'm very excited for your perspective on this one because you've had such a wide-ranging career. But question number one is called, is the chief of staff role good for growth? My background is heavily in operations, and I'm trying to take that next high-impact step. I found a position for Chief of Staff, and it's very operational due to strategy, investor relations, and of course, talent. However, the COO position is filled, and that's more my thing. Basically, is this a good position for growth and respect to moving forward? I know it is, of course, but I want to eventually be COO or CEO and not a quote glorified assistant, which annoyingly is what I've heard people say about this role. From Amira Farah.
Okay. I I'll send you a link from the Moshari Method curriculum that you can put in the show notes about this.
Yeah.
There are several different types of chief of staff roles. One is more of the EA type of thing. One is more strategy driven, and one is more senior operator type of thing. For me, my first job in Silicon Valley was Justin Kahn's personal chief of staff. In fact, he was the Justin of Justin TV before they turned it into Twitch, before they sold Twitch to Amazon for $1 billion a few years ago. He hired me post Twitch acquisition to do everything from manage his social media to buy art to negotiating a book deal to going to YC. He was a YC partner at the time, going to YC and learning about new companies he wanted to start and researching. And that's how I ended up with Atrium, was through being his personal chief of staff. So for me, earlier in my career, I was a little bit of that. Like, I took a scar to the shop, right? I did whatever needed to be done. And then that led me to be the first employee at Atrium, where I hired the first 100 people in the first year, which was fucking crazy. For me, I mean, being a chief of staff is the backbone of my career in several different ways. Of like, I started with Moshari Method primarily as Matt's chief of staff, and I sit between not only Moshari Method but all of his other businesses. My perspective, I think for this person specifically, it depends on their skills. I think if they want to be a COO, I think the chief of staff is the way to cut your teeth. The reason being, you have visibility across everything that's happening in the organization, and you have to be able to learn how all the different teams run, how all the different managers run, how to get things done, how to execute quickly, whatever, and that directly attributes to being a COO, with scale and with management training and all that sort of thing. So I think not everyone is cut out for it. You can't have an ego and be a chief of staff. You can't be above putting a desk together at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night. Like, if you're the chief of staff for a startup, you have to check your ego at the door, be willing and excited to do a lot of different things, and like, something I would recommend to someone going into this world is really have a system for task management, and like, do not let anything slip through the cracks. Have a system, get things done, because you're like, they used to call me the accountability czar at Atrium, since I would chase people around about their goals, right? Yeah. So I think yes, the chief of staff is a great step to being a COO, and yes, there's a lot of things that go into that, but I'm happy to take that wherever you want to go.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement. Like, I think the chief of staff role is fucking awesome. Like, I think it's awesome for everyone, to be honest. But like with every role, you need to be considered in what kind of company you're going into, or what kind of person you're hiring into a chief of staff role from both sides. So like, I've seen, watching Matt have multiple chief of staffs over the years, like, they always start in chief of staff, and like, so often they go into like executive roles at the company. And for the chief of staffs that we've hired, they've been like some of the most impactful possible roles in our company. Like, they come in, it is the ultimate amplifier. Like, so the chief of staff that we have at working at Vigo was chief of staff, and now they're our head of ops. I was telling Ali before this, but like, one of the most impactful hires we have, and that's just because they came in, they get access to everything about the business. They know more about the business than anyone else. Like, because they are in every single like impactful meeting, like sensitive meeting. They know everything. So if you want growth because you want to see no hidden view of a company, you want to know all of the ugly shit where all the skeletons are, the only role that know that are the CEO and the chief of staff. Like, because when you're in that chief of staff, you are in the fucking fires when they happen. So like, I haven't done it, but like, I just can't imagine that there is an insane growth from having that. But one thing you said, Ali, which I'd never actually thought about before, is that a chief of staff definitely cannot have ego. Like a chief of staff needs to want to amplify the person they're working with. So like our head of ops, like she fucking like gets so much like she's so passionate about like making other people just get way more done. She's an amazing amplifier. But like at the end of the day, like I'm CEO. There is fucking ego in that role. So like so much of the time, like you just have to deal with ego. So you have to deal with like my bullshit if you're like my chief of staff. Um, that doesn't mean you can't have opinions and stuff like that. But yeah, I didn't think about that. Like going into chief of staff is, I always thought I wanted to be a chief of staff. Um, in a post Vigo world, but now I'm actually not sure if I can check my ego at the door enough, like you, Ali.
Thank you. We can talk about that later. I think it's really important. I think there's a couple things there. I think that, and this is something I've learned over time, like you, to be an effective chief of staff or an effective operator, the company always comes first. Like the CEO always comes first, the company always comes first. Like you can't, you like just keep. I do this, I think, more than maybe I should. But like I keep my cards very close to my chest personally at work. Um, like I won't bring things up about my personal life unless somebody asks me, right? Of like my job is to be here and to execute and to like crush. And so the company can crush. And I think that's an interesting thing. Like it's not the Ally show, right? And like it can never, I have no interest in that happening. And so there are people who can do this well, who have that skill or can learn that skill to be able to check their stuff at the door and not project it onto other people. And there are people that can't, right? Of like, there are people that crumble under this type of thing because they can't be pulled in their different directions. There's something that we were talking about before is something that I think a lot about because I travel all the time. I've been on 16 flights in the last 6 weeks or so, like some crazy amount. And something we were talking about before that I think is relevant to the chief of staff and like high operator roles is what I would call like the single self of like, who are you in any situation, in any location, and like, how do you interact around that with people, right? Of if I'm in LA at a business meeting, there are certain things about me that don't change, right? Or if I'm in Hawaii and I'm at my house and I'm on the beach, like there are certain things about me that don't change. There's some things that do, but the things that don't are like trying to be egoless, caring about the people around me, learning like the personal value things. And in operating roles, you're giving, and very similar to CEO also, right? Like you're giving people attention all the time, you're giving people energy all the time. And so to be able to execute at such a high level, you have to show up for yourself so you can show up for other people, which is an interesting, like, reverse ego thing of holding space for yourself to have a solid foundation in order to do all these things on top of it, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's making me think of like regardless of whether a chief of staff role is good for growth or not. I think there are some considerations that anyone should make considering about growth in their career. And for me, the things that are jumping out of what you said and some of my own ideas just sprinkled on top is the first one is like if you're looking to grow and to be successful in really like any kind of role, you need to build a really strong foundation of who you are first. And so like if you want to be good at chief of staff and grow into an exec role of some kind, or if you want to be a good engineer or you want to be good at anything, like you need to bring your best possible version of you to work. Because if you're coming burnt out with no boundaries, you're just going to bring a shittier version, make shittier decisions and do more shittier hours.
Right.
So fix that underlying core self and sense of self at the beginning, which is something, that I think you spoke really well about.
Right.
And then I'll just say like one thing that maybe we're glossing over a tiny bit is that I think chief of staff can be amazing for growth. I think there are a chance that it can be terrible for growth too. But what's really important for you to work out if you're taking on a chief of staff role is who are you going to be working with? So learn more about that company. If possible, see if they've had chief of staffs before. They probably have. Like, and if they have, what was their job like? Speak to those chief of staffs, speak to the other
Right.
people in the company, see how the chief of staff is done. But like in the right company and for the right person, I think a chief of staff is just an insane growth opportunity. Like probably like 2 or 3 times more effective than a university degree.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I would 1,000% endorse that. And something that I think chief of staff and executive assistants, um, more than mostly any other roles, really need to dig into who they're working with before you. I mean, as you, anyone should at any role, but you spend so much time with the CEO or the person that you're reporting to, like that really matters. Something that I used to do when I was hiring at Atrium or for some of my portfolio companies is I have a list of questions that are very interpersonal around like what's your learning style, when do you like to take meetings, do you take phone calls, like very granular preference questions to ask the CEO or to ask the person that you'd be reporting to. So you don't find out things later, or like what, even at going so far as like, what are your triggers? Like, what are the things that will upset you if I like fuck up? Or like, how do, if I, like, if and when I mess up, like, how do I approach you about that in a safe way? And like, you can ask those questions during an interview. You absolutely should. There's a lot of turnover in chief of staff roles comes from a mismatch in personality or like something like that. Like Matt and I could not be more different. This is very represented in my outfit right now. I'm a black cat and he's a golden retriever. Like
Yeah.
he's the balloon and I'm the person holding him to the ground. We're almost opposites. Um, in a way that's really fun and we appreciate and value that about each other, and like we are such a good team because we're such complements. And so that's another interesting kind of thing to look at when evaluating that sort of thing. I absolutely, to answer, I totally got lost on the plot of like good for growth being the point of that question. Totally recognize that. um but I think if this is something you care about, you want to be a high level executor, there's very few things that can teach you more than a chief of staff role. If you're willing to endure the pain, there's a certain
Yeah.
level of masochism it's a pretty high level of masochism that's involved in something like this. Um, yeah, I'll just quickly mention this before we keep moving. Like Mushari method, we don't work with, or we very rarely work with CEOs that don't have chief of staffs. Like chief of
Mm,
staff as an early hire is the best possible move you could make for company growth because they unlock. I think you use the phrase amplify. The way that I think about is like amplification, but also removing barriers for the people around you. Um,
yeah.
Having a chief of staff as a CEO of an earlier stage company or any stage company is a huge, huge thing to do way earlier than you think that you should, would be my recommendation.
Yeah. It felt wrong to us to hire a chief of staff, but goddamn, Matt was right
But it
again.
makes the biggest difference, right? Matt knows a thing or two, and he was right again. And it makes the biggest difference of the company of having, especially early days of like at Atrium, there was 4 of us in an office. I don't think I ever had a job title.
Yeah.
I was de facto chief of staff because I don't think I ever had a job title, but I did everything from hiring 100 people to putting desks together to like working on, not working on deals, but like the investment side of things and all over the place. Like, and having someone that you can throw random things to early in the founding journey is huge because then the founders can focus on what they're best at. And then there's a person like nebulous goo behind them that gets all the things
Yeah.
done.
Yeah. Chief of staff is like glue, absolutely, just holding the rest of the dysfunction together. So, look, I'm going to try and bring this one to a close here. So, is the chief of staff role good for growth? Absolutely. Like,
Yeah.
there's almost no role in a company that could be better for growth. So, if you're interested in becoming an exec at a company or like a CEO or starting your own company one day, the biggest shortcut to that is being a chief of staff. And that's because you get access to all of the information, the skeletons, the problems, like the challenges, the opportunities, the people on a level as a chief of staff that no one else in the company gets. So if you want to shortcut like yourself into a community that you might not even have the social capital for yet, a chief of staff is a way to do that. If you want to feel what it feels like to be a CEO, the chief of staff feels like that. Like nothing can prepare you. Nothing can prepare you, but nothing can prepare you better than that chief of staff role. But it comes with a lot of challenges as well. You've got to be really careful about who you're going to work for. You've got to be careful about the company's trajectory, how they think about a chief of staff, what the chief of staff been like in the past. But you've also got to be prepared to do like like shitty jobs all the time. And that's often because the CEO is doing the shitty jobs as well. But they're going to get passed to you like straight away so that the CEO can get unlocked. So it's a role where you're going to have to check your ego at the door. But if you can do that, god damn, I love the chief of staff role, and I think it would be great for anyone interested in moving down that path. Absolutely. So Amira Farah, that's advice. You have been advised. Anything missed there, Ali?
No, I don't think so. I think that's great. I think one thing I'll mention as a precursor to a chief of staff, especially with startup roles, is the title. Like, if you're more on the junior side, if you're fresh out of school and you want to get into startups, you want to get into being a chief of staff eventually before even considering like a COO type of thing. The title that I would look for is BizOps Associate or Business Operations Associate. Often reports into the COO or the head of ops, and the chief of staff will often sit above that. So if you're a sweet baby angel looking to get into the higher operating stuff, the BizOps Associate or Business Operations is where I would look to break in.
All right, we've got some bonus advice for Amira Farah just in case she's a sweet baby angel, which I like. All right, well, we're going to move on to challenge number 2. This is called, do you procrastinate? I've been trying to start my own company far too many times. It's not that the ideas aren't good, the problem is the implementation. During the process, I found myself procrastinating, avoiding certain tasks, and ending up giving up or missing the opportunity. My question, very openly, is to know if you guys procrastinate. How do you procrastinate, and how are you trying to fight it? For example, my typical procrastination method is to simply concentrate on the next idea in line, giving up on the previous one because I love the process of beginning of creating something. Open to any feedback. From PP Martins.
Okay, do you want me to start here?
Yeah. Give me your thoughts.
All right. Being a human and being a founder is psychological warfare against yourself. And having individual sovereignty and being able to be proactive is a learned skill, in my opinion. I think as humans, I'll loop this back. I'll go meta and then I'll loop it back. We generally will shy away from the things that are painful and you go with the easy thing, right? But a lot of the best operators that I know, a lot of the best CEOs, venture people, high level, whatever, they will look fear in the face or pain in the face and start with the painful thing. And that's often regarded as like a fear practice of like the thing that you don't want to do or the thing that you have fear of that you're going to fail about. Start with the painful thing, or like get somebody to help you start there and just do it. A little soundbite that I've heard in this situation for your question asker is something is better than perfect. Of like, this is often startup advice you'll get from everybody. Like, do the thing, put out the shitty thing, see what happens, iterate on it, and keep moving, rather than building and building and building and like trying to make something perfect before releasing it. I think if you're a solo founder, procrastination is very easy to do. I think the way that I've learned to combat this is I'm very much, as an operator, a mega list person. I'm a mega list person. I prioritize my list every single day of like, what are the things that I'm absolutely going to get done today? What are the things I don't want to do today? Why don't I want to do them? But I think the way, and I mean, ChatGPT would be a really interesting homework for this person. We worked with this, I can find the prompt and send it to you. We worked with this guy called Adam Lauren, who is a ChatGPT expert for companies, right? And he showed us this exercise that was basically like, I have this goal of in 6 months, I want to do this thing. Help me make a plan to get there. And so my recommendation for this person would be like, okay, start 6 months out. Where do you want to be in 6 months? How do we get, what's our checkpoint? And then break it down from there into even like days of like to get $100,000 in sales 6 months from now. We need to get, if you're breaking it in half, 50 in 3 months, and like further down from there, making it into bite-sized pieces. Because when you look at the thing, the big scary thing in 6 months, you get scared, right? And you go into your shell, and then you don't want to do it, and then you're going to procrastinate, you're going to miss your chance. But if you can break it down into bite-sized pieces, it's not scary, it's super doable, and then you have a thing to do one day that helps you take a step forward. um and so my absolutely, I do procrastinate on things, but I've psychologically warfared myself to be able to fight the good fight against my own brain of like, I start my mornings with what are the three things I'm absolutely going to do today, and what are my nice to haves. And it's generally the nice to haves that get procrastinated and not the like absolutes. um I hope that helps. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. I like the idea that it's like it's psychological warfare with yourself. And it is,
Yeah.
you know, like when you're constantly moving on to the next task, it's like that's just like one part of you waging a battle with the other part of you, which knows that you need to get
Right.
this thing done. And so like sometimes you just need to face the bullshit. Like
Right.
I guess, you know, to this question asker, PP Martins, first of all, hate the name. Hate saying PP like that. But anyways, you got
You
me.
probably did that on purpose.
Yeah.
Probably did that on purpose.
um, I I'm exactly the same. You know, I'm a founder. I love new shiny things. What's the best new cool thing? Like,
Right.
uh, I want to do another podcast. I want to do another project. I've got another idea for a business. It's
Right.
so easy to come up with all that kind of stuff. It's like, I know exactly what you're saying. That's my procrastination method as well. So I'm always busy, but it's so easy to be busy as a founder. It's like you're actually especially qualified at being busy. What's really
Right.
fucking hard is being busy on the right shit. And to be busy on the right shit, it means that you just need to cut the bullshit and stop lying to yourself. Like you actually don't need to do that. And the way I find, I like obviously this is a skill that you can get better and better and better at. Okay, it's always going to be there. That's one of the flaws in your personality is that you love shiny new things, but you need to get hyper obsessed with like finishing shit, because finishing shit is where you get any of the kind of value. You don't get value from starting something. So I realized this about myself, and I think about people generally in the last couple of months, is that I find it almost impossible to prioritize tasks. Because when a task is coming at me from another part of the business or a new idea, and it's the most important thing, and like it feels so important, everything feels the most important. So it is very hard to look at an individual task and work out how important that is. So I keep always once a week like zooming out and looking at projects, because I think it's super easy to actually prioritize your projects. It's not necessarily as easy to prioritize your tasks. So if once a week you're looking, is that task, what does it ladder up to? Which project is it laddering up to? Even though it's really important, is that project actually important? And if the project's not important, just fuck the task off. It doesn't matter. So get really clear about what are the larger objectives that you're working towards, and make sure all of your time is on those. And then one thing that Matt does, he recommends doing this thing called an energy audit. So at the end of your week, go through your calendar and look at all the different stuff you did. You know, you did 2 hours on emails here, you did an hour on this project, an hour on that project. And he likes doing that to show you like what's the stuff that you like doing in your week. But you need to do the opposite. You need to go through and work out how sparse was your time, how all over the place was it, and you can see that you need to actually put time into the projects that matter. So I'd just say all these new projects, get rid of them. Just face reality that you can't do them. Pick one project that's really closely aligned with your identity and what you want to become and your values, and just get really fucking serious about that. Then every time a task comes back to you, just ask yourself, what project does this ladder up to? Is that project my number one priority? And if it's not, cut the fucking task and deal with the blowout from it. And that's it. That's how you'll get past it. And then just keep doing it week after week after week, and it'll become inherent for you.
I agree with that. I think that totally makes sense. I see it. That's interesting that you say level up to. I think of it as bottom down. And for us with Moshari Method, we're building out a tech company called Company OS about internal company management, managing meetings, managing goals, task management, etc. And every single one of my tasks is tied to a goal. I have 4 company goals for the quarter. Every single one of my tasks, when I put it into my system, I go to the goal first, and then I put in the action. And so I can see if there's an action that's not aligned with one of my goals, it's such an easy qualifier for me to be like, fuck this, this is not my job, or it's not my job, but like I have a separate bucket for that of like as like a COO or chief of staff, there's like some of that's inherent, but like having separating out your task list into like goal number one, make $100,000. Goal number two, raise this much money. Goal number three, whatever, and like separate out your task list like that. So then whenever you put in an action, you directly see where it's going, right? And I think the calendar thing is, if you looked at my calendar, you'd be like, this girl is fucking crazy. Um, I've every single thing that I do, I put in my calendar under for a 15-minute block. And every single day, I will like change the color of certain things for what it was for, right? Of like if it was an internal call, if it was a task, if it was a project, it gets a different color. It might give somebody like a seizure because it's a little bit crazy, but for me, when I look back, that's an extrapolation out of the like energy audit thing, right? But then I see what I did that day and I see what I didn't do and etc. So that's like expert mode level crazy of productivity, of goal oriented productivity. But I think I totally agree with what you're saying, and tying it to a greater good will make it easier to do things.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess let's try and bring this one to a close. I think we're pretty aligned on this one.
All right.
So, PP Martins, you're procrastinating. I fucking get it. I have the same kind of inherent challenges where I just want to go to the next shiny new object. But the end of the day is that you just need to get really serious about what you want to achieve and then tie everything to the only goals that you care about. So an example of this is figure out the one major thing you need to do. And for me recently, it was fundraising. And then I used to ask myself every day, every task, does this directly contribute to my number one goal? And if it didn't, I would cut the job. Okay, I would cut the task. So get really clear, know what you need to do, and then just always ladder up every task that comes up from you. What project does it link to? It's hard to prioritize tasks. It's not hard to prioritize goals and projects. So just always come back, ladder up, and just cut the shit. And I think, just look in the mirror and just face to yourself that you're either not working on the same projects, or you just need to cut up. You're not working on the right projects, or you just need to cut a bunch of the bullshit out of it. And then if you get to real expert mode, go down the Aly path and chunk out your entire calendar in 15 minutes in color coordinated modes to make sure that you're working on the right goals. And the last piece of information is read the book Getting Things Done. It's just like it is an amazing operating system if you suffer from procrastination about how to make sure all of the right stuff is going into the right buckets as well. It's a great task management system. It's a great way of thinking. The book is exceptional. I've read it a bunch of times. It's dry. It's a hard read, but you will not regret reading it. It's a terrific level up for you in anything you're trying to achieve.
I love that. Can I give two quick sound bites and then we'll
Absolutely.
close this one? Okay. One, saying yes to something means saying no to something else. And so that forcing of prioritization of like, if I say yes to this, what is getting deprioritized? That's important. Number two, in this mindset shift from being reactive to being proactive, the thing that I often think about is if you don't live your own life, someone else is going to live it for you, right? If you don't protect your own time, you don't plan your own time, you're going to get caught in the reactivity of it and not actually take any steps forward. And so flipping from being reactive to being proactive is a choice.
I love those. That makes me think of another piece of advice post being this being closed out, is that with this, I love that idea that every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And for me, like an extreme of that is that every single thing you think of doing, you should stack rank. So everything should be in relative order. And if two things are like kind of similar in priority, one has to be more important than something else. So you have one in like huge list of which shows you what is actually most important. So if you have that massive list in front of you as a way of training yourself up to understand the priority of things properly, every time you get a new task, look at that list. Go all the way down until you find this is actually only the 27th most important thing. I've got 27 fucking things that I should do before I get to this. Like think about everything in relative terms, because you can only do one thing at a time. So you need to understand that when you're when you're taking on another task, you are pushing back a bunch of other stuff. I love that approach, Aly.
Yeah.
All right. So as I expected, that's all the time we have questions for today. Aly and I went way deeper on questions than I expected, which was absolutely could have been guessed by anyone beforehand.
Kind of predicted that.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. All right. Well, that brings us to the last segment of the show, which is plugs. So tell me, Aly, what's going on? What do you want to plug at the moment?
I would like to plug everyone having a great day. I know a lot of your audience, if I have an actual plug, a lot of your audience are CEOs, founders. Check out Moshari Method. We are both like the world's best executive coaches, but we also have software we're going to be releasing in the next few months about internal company management. Check that out. Check out Matt's book, The Great CEO Within. And that's what I got for you.
Definitely check out everything Matt Moshari. I can't fucking recommend that highly enough. I've probably already talked about on this podcast 100 times, but The Greatest CEO Within is the greatest book out there, and it will change your life if you read that book. And then, Matt's got podcast episodes all out there. Go watch him. He was just on the Tim Ferriss show recently as well. That's a freaking great episode. And then if you want to coach, hit up Moshari Method. They have the single best coaching methodology out there. But at least start with the book. It's so good. I love that. And then, plugs on my side. As always, like and subscribe. Get out your phone right now. 5 stars. Then, as always, go and steal someone's phone. 5 stars on that phone. And then also just leave hilarious comments on the YouTube videos as well. I love comments, okay? I think that's going to make the podcast bigger. I don't know why, but I think comments are good. Let's hack the algorithm together for me. And then thank you to everyone who writes in. We love these problems. We love the questions. If you, the listener, have a problem, you want us to answer them, send them through to podcast@joeldigitalmoney.com. And then lastly, I have a booking link in my show notes. So book some time with me. If you love talking about this shit, hit me up. Or if you want to play the game with me, hit me up as well. And that's everything. We're going to wrap this one up. Thank you, Aly, so much for coming on today.
Amazing.
I love
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for pitching the businesses as well. That was good fun. This has been another episode of the Do As I Say podcast. We'll see you all next week.